Christmas at the Holloways was always a production, one of those events where even the napkins had monograms and the wine had a story. I'd gone 3 years without incident, blending into the background like a well-dressed coat rack. But that year was different. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the way everyone's eyes fell on me when I spoke. Whatever it was, my stutter, usually a quiet inconvenience, had decided to show up in full. We were halfway through the prime rib when her father, Arthur Holloway, the patriarch with a booming voice and a wine cellar worth more than my car, asked me what our plans were for the new year. I smiled, swallowed a bit too hard, and started to speak. We're PP planning a trip to CC Call. That was all I got out before Tara stood up from her chair. She raised one arm like she was narrating a play, scrunched her face, and with a warped version of my voice, said, We're going to CC Colorado. She threw in some robotic arm twitches for effect, like I was some glitchy machine on its last leg. At first, I thought she was just trying to lighten the moment, maybe laugh with me. But then Helen, her mother, slapped the table and let out a laugh so loud, the crystal glassware on the buffet clinked. That's my girl, she shouted, then held up her hand for a high five like they'd been rehearsing it all morning. The entire table went quiet. No one knew where to look. Except Tara, who locked eyes with me and added, Look at him, struggling like a broken machine. Maybe if we turn him off and on again, he'll learn to speak like a normal person. I sat there, frozen. I didn't even blink. My smile had cracked somewhere between her voice distortion and the word broken. I could feel the warmth in my ears, the flush creeping up my neck, the pressure in my chest. But worse than all of that was the silence that followed. Not a single voice of protest. No one said, That's not okay. Not even a disapproving grunt from the distant cousin who always overpoured his brandy. Just clinks of forks and a few uncomfortable coughs. They were all complicit in their quiet. Tara sat back down like nothing had happened, buttered a roll, and passed it to her father. I wanted to scream, or cry, or walk out. But instead, I did what I learned to do over the years. I stayed still. I clenched my jaw. I folded my napkin just a little too tightly. I sipped my wine like it had answers at the bottom of the glass. After dessert, some kind of overly spiced gingerbread cake that tasted like humiliation, I offered to clear the plates. Helen waved her hand like she barely heard me, already launching into a story about her Pilates instructor's divorce. Tara didn't look at me. Not once. So I gathered dishes. Plate by plate, glass by glass. I moved through that dining room like a ghost. I could hear their laughter behind me, loud and carefree. It wasn't the laughter that hurt. It was the fact that it was happening without a single thought to me. Like I was the entertainment, and the help rolled into one. In the kitchen, I let the hot water run longer than needed. I scrubbed at plates that had already been scraped clean. I stared out the window above the sink, where snow had started to fall in soft waves. It should have been a peaceful moment. Instead, it felt like I was watching someone else's life, a happier man's reflection in the window, doing chores for a family that loved him. The running water didn't drown out the echoes. I could still hear Tara's voice, warped and mocking. Hubby needs a reboot, followed by the high-pitched slap of her mother's palm meeting hers. That voice, it lodged itself somewhere behind my ribs. Not just because of the words, but because of the ease with which they came. The joy she took in saying them. The casual cruelty. When I finished the dishes, I wiped my hands on a cloth towel and stood there a moment longer. I could have gone back into the dining room, rejoined the performance. But I didn't. I stepped outside instead, letting the cold snap me back into myself. The air was sharp, biting, honest. And for the first time that evening, I felt something real. I wasn't ready to make decisions. Not yet. But I knew, deep in my gut, something had shifted. Something permanent. That night, on the drive home, the silence between us was thick and padded with everything left unsaid. But what Tara didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this was the last time I would let their table define me. I had swallowed a lot for love. But humiliation? That was a meal I wouldn't eat twice. The drive home was quiet, save for the soft tapping of Tara's nails on her phone screen. She scrolled with the kind of intensity only someone deeply entertained could manage, her eyes crinkling as she let out little giggles. Sharp, smug, private. I glanced at her, hoping for a glimpse of guilt, maybe a flicker of remorse. But no, just amusement. Like she was replaying her favorite scene from a comedy. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to anchor myself in the silence. I counted the exit signs on the freeway like they were rosary beads. When I finally found the words to speak, They came out quiet. Tara, about earlier. At dinner. She didn't look up. What about it? The way you mocked me. In front of everyone. That hurt. I wasn't trying to accuse her, just understand. Maybe even ask for an apology I thought I deserved. She snorted, like I'd asked her if water was wet. It was a joke, Warren. Jesus. God, you're so sensitive. This is why people get uncomfortable around you. Uncomfortable. That word hit like a slap. She said it so casually, so freely, like I was a burden she bore with grace. Like my presence, my voice, was something she had to excuse to the world. I stared straight ahead, eyes on the glowing white lines, letting her words etch themselves into my spine. Sensitive. Uncomfortable. Like I was the problem. Like I was the reason her friends tensed up or her family looked through me. All this time I thought I was quiet, polite, careful. Now it felt like I'd been apologizing for existing without even knowing it. I didn't speak the rest of the way home. I parked in our usual spot, helped carry in the leftover food containers Helen insisted we take, and unloaded the trunk like muscle memory. Tara breezed past me into the house, muttering something about how cold it was. I moved slowly, deliberately, not because I was tired, but because my mind was suddenly full of old memories replaying with a new lens. Like the time at her office party when I tried to introduce myself to her manager and she gently slid in front of me, saying, "He's not great with words. I'll explain." Or the birthday dinner where she answered every question directed at me. Or the wedding we attended where she told someone I had social anxiety so I wouldn't embarrass myself trying to make small talk. I had always assumed she was helping me, protecting me. Now I saw the truth. She had been preemptively covering her own shame. That night, she went to shower. I sat on the couch, the television playing some sitcom neither of us was really watching. Her phone buzzed beside me. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I respected privacy, even when mine wasn't always returned. But something pulled me. Not curiosity, instinct. The same instinct that flares up when something inside you whispers, "You've missed something." The screen lit up with a preview of a message from her friend Cassie. That video of him stuttering was hilarious. Your mom's reaction killed me. My blood went cold. Video? My hands moved before I could even think. I tapped the message, which opened a thread full of laughing emojis, gifs of malfunctioning robots, and inside jokes I didn't understand. But one thing became clear. This wasn't just about dinner. There was a video. A video of me. A video she recorded. Of my stutter. And she had shared it. I felt like I was drowning as I scrolled. Another message read. "Can you send me that one where he tries to say recommendation?" That was gold. That one? There were more. I opened her gallery. Nothing in the main albums. But I knew how to dig. I worked in IT for a reason. Within minutes, I found a hidden folder, synced to a shared cloud backup. And there they were. Dozens of short clips. Each one labeled with snide titles. Buffering. Hubby.exe has stopped responding. Loading language pack. Failed. Videos of me talking at dinner, on the phone, helping her friends move, asking questions at the doctor's office. Every single one captured my stutter. Every single one turned into a punchline. There was one from our anniversary dinner. I'd taken her to a rooftop restaurant and tried to order dessert in French, just trying to be sweet, romantic. I stuttered through it, but smiled anyway. I thought it had been charming. The clip was captioned, "Romance.exe not found." And the comments, her friends, her mother, even her coworker David from marketing, laughing at me. Not one of them seemed disturbed by what they saw. They didn't just laugh, they built jokes on top of mine. One person even replied, "I'd fake a stutter too if I had to live with Tara." I didn't cry. I didn't punch the wall. I just sat there, staring at a version of my life I hadn't known existed. A life where I was a character in a comedy I didn't sign up for. She came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, hair dripping. "Can you turn on the heater?" she asked, completely unaware. I stood, placed her phone face down on the table, and said, "I'm going to bed." "You're mad again?" Seriously, I didn't answer, because something had snapped in me. Not a scream, not even rage, just clarity. She didn't love me. She loved mocking me. And the most heartbreaking part? I didn't even know when it started. Only that now I saw it. All of it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. Her face lit up by the glow of her phone screen, shoulders shaking as she laughed. Laughed at me. Not with me. Never with me. I lay in the dark, my chest rising and falling slowly, deliberately, as I stared at the ceiling and let the silence settle. There was no denying it anymore. The woman I married had been collecting my speech slips like trophies. Each stutter, each pause, each failed syllable was another laugh track for her highlight reel. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. I slipped out of bed quietly, avoiding the floorboard that always creaked. She was still asleep, her breathing shallow and rhythmic. Peaceful, comfortable, as if she hadn't just shattered something sacred. I walked to my workspace in the corner of the guest room and opened our shared cloud drive. I wanted to be sure I hadn't imagined it all, that my hurt hadn't distorted the truth. It hadn't. There it was again, the hidden folder, titled LOL_clips. I clicked through the thumbnails, each one a small, pixelated version of me, opening gifts, talking to a waiter, explaining directions, just living in ways that now made my stomach turn. I clicked on a video labeled Father's Day Disaster, remembering that day vividly. I tried to make a toast at my in-laws' backyard lunch. The words didn't come smoothly, but I'd pushed through, said what I meant to say. Tara had smiled that day. I thought she was proud. But there it was, filmed from across the table, zoomed in on my mouth, her snickering caught in the background. I closed the clip. My hands hovered over the mouse. Part of me wanted to delete it all, burn it to digital ash. But another part, stronger, colder, knew I needed to keep it. Proof. Evidence. I didn't know what for yet, but instinct told me to preserve the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I scrolled down and saw something worse than any video. A group chat thread, screenshot archives saved in the folder. Her mother, Cassie, and a few other names I didn't recognize. They called me the glitch. Said things like, "Make sure you don't bring the glitch to the gala, he'll short-circuit on the CEO." Another one, "My mom asked if he was developmentally delayed. I told her it's quirky." They laughed. They always laughed. But the one that hit hardest was from Tara herself, only a few weeks ago. "I just tell people he has a learning disability so they won't ask questions. Easier than explaining the stutter." I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't even shake. I just sat back, heart slow and steady. A calm had washed over me, not peace, but a strange kind of numbness that came with acceptance. It was over. Not just the trust. Not just the marriage. The illusion. The dream I had clung to for years had been unplugged. Hubby.exe had indeed crashed. I looked around our apartment, taking it in like I was seeing it for the first time. The wedding photos on the wall. Her college diploma on the shelf, framed next to a picture of us from our honeymoon in Lisbon. Her laughter had been genuine that trip, or so I believed. Now I didn't know what had been real and what had just been material for another punchline. I stood, walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water. I watched the light spill across the counter, listened to the quiet hum of the fridge, and asked myself a simple question. What do you want to do next? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't confront her with the evidence and wait for a fake apology. She'd only twist it, tell me I was too sensitive, too emotional. She might even cry, spin the narrative, say I misunderstood her sense of humor. No, I would not give her the stage again. Instead, I would make a plan. A calm, methodical, silent plan. One that would let me leave with my dignity, my voice, and whatever parts of myself she hadn't already chipped away. I opened a blank notepad on my desktop and titled it, Exit Strategy. I wrote 3 words at the top: preserve, protect, prepare. It began with digital backups. I transferred every file, screenshot, and chat log to an encrypted drive. I made a copy for cloud storage under a private account. Then I started logging access timestamps, cataloging the worst messages, and saving versions in different formats: PDF, zip, secure image files. After that, I pulled up our joint account information and took notes on recurring payments, what was shared, what was hers, what was mine. I started to trace back everything that legally belonged to me. I even checked the lease to see how my name appeared. I needed to know what I could take when I walked and what I could leave behind without a fight. By the time Tara woke up, I had already outlined the first 5 steps of my escape. She walked into the kitchen wearing my college hoodie and kissed my cheek absent-mindedly before reaching for the cereal box. "Morning," she said, like everything was normal. I smiled. "Morning." That smile wasn't fake. It was armor. Because I knew something she didn't. I was already gone. From that morning forward, I became 2 men. The one Tara saw, quiet, steady, the husband who still folded laundry and reheated her leftovers, and the one she didn't, the one mapping every inch of his escape route. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger anymore. It was about survival. about peeling myself away from a life that had hollowed me out without leaving blood on the floor. The first thing I did was get a burner phone. I paid in cash. No traces. No questions. I used it only for contacting one person, Adrian Fields, an attorney recommended by a friend of a friend, someone I trusted enough to help me disappear from a marriage that had become a slow erosion of my self-worth. The moment she picked up the phone, I knew I'd called the right woman. Her voice was low, calm, not too sympathetic, but not cold either. She asked all the right questions: financial ties, joint assets, prenuptial agreements. We didn't have one. That might actually work in your favor, she said, and something about the way she said it made me believe it. We met twice a week for the next month. She helped me open a separate bank account, one Tara didn't know existed. Every paycheck from that point on went there. I rerouted my direct deposit and gave HR a story about managing separate finances to stay organized. Tara didn't even ask when I told her. She just nodded and said, "Smart." She had no idea. Next, I rented a small storage unit about 30 minutes away, in a part of town we rarely visited. I started moving things in gradually: boxes of books, a few old clothes I claimed I was donating, my guitar, my work tools. She didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. I had become background noise in my own home, and for once, that invisibility worked for me. I began cataloging everything that was mine. Not emotionally mine, legally. I kept receipts, scanned serial numbers, documented everything I touched. When I left, I didn't want her to say I took what wasn't mine. I didn't want her to twist the story and call it theft. She could have the couch, the coffee table, the stupid abstract art she insisted matched the rug. I'd take my freedom and the few things that held my identity. That was the only division I needed. I also began creating a digital paper trail: emails, dated spreadsheets, secure folders. I saved the videos and chat logs from her cloud account and sent them to Adrian. She told me they weren't just vile, they were admissible. If Tara tried to dispute the separation, we had documentation of emotional abuse. "This isn't about her stubbing your pride," Adrian said. "This is dehumanization. You didn't imagine it." That validation did more for me than I expected. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was a man finally waking up from a long, quiet gaslight. To avoid confrontation, I told Tara my back had been acting up. I started sleeping on the couch. At first, she was annoyed, rolled her eyes and muttered about me being dramatic again, but she didn't press. After the second week, she stopped commenting altogether. The couch became my space, and with it came clarity. Every night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, planning what utilities needed to be transferred, which insurance policies to revise, which passwords to change. I had a checklist I updated daily. I named the document "Moving Inventory," just in case she ever stumbled across it. If she opened it, she'd see bullet points like printer, USB drive, hard case, and assume it was work-related. The truth was, I was untethering myself from a house that never felt like home. I even practiced my responses: calm, firm, rehearsed. "This is not a conversation. Please direct all communication through my attorney. No, I'm not coming back." I knew that once I walked, she'd scramble to reel me in, not out of love, but control. And I refused to give her another opening to manipulate me. Still, I played my part well. I smiled at dinner. I brought her coffee. I responded to texts like nothing was different. We even had a few dinners with friends, where I nodded and laughed while she made subtle digs about how I still hadn't fixed that stutter. Every jab rolled off me like water now, because the joke wasn't on me anymore. It was on her, and she didn't know it yet. The day I found the apartment was the day everything clicked into place. It wasn't fancy, just a quiet one-bedroom with hardwood floors and good light. The landlord was kind. The lease was month to month. When I stepped into that empty space, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I signed the papers the next morning and paid in full for the first 3 months. I went home that night and hugged Tara. She looked surprised, but didn't question it. She was already scrolling on her phone. I stared at her a moment longer and realized, with almost painful clarity, that I didn't hate her. I just didn't recognize her anymore. Maybe I never really had. She would never see it coming. Because I wasn't leaving in rage. I was leaving in silence. The last place Tara expected consequences was work. Monarch Brands was her playground, her status badge. She'd clawed her way into account management through wine-slicked smiles and relentless networking. She loved to tell people she earned everything on merit, but I'd seen enough to know better. What she lacked in depth, she made up for in charm and performance. And Monarch? It rewarded that. Flash over foundation, which made what I discovered that much more satisfying. We both worked there, Tara in sales and account management, me in IT systems. Different departments, different buildings even, but the same network. She always underestimated what I had access to. She saw me as the guy who fixed printers and sent reminders about password changes. What she didn't know was that I had back-end visibility into almost everything: data logs, document edits, submission timestamps, internal change requests. Not that I ever abused it. Until now, there was never a reason to. It started with an odd request that pinged my inbox one afternoon while I was sipping coffee and finishing a maintenance report. It was a user flag. Tara Holloway had submitted a request to re-access an archived expense report system that had been decommissioned 3 quarters ago. The system was still technically active, but only for audit purposes, and access required special admin clearance, which meant the request came through my team. I almost denied it automatically, but something made me pause. Maybe it was the timing. She'd just bragged about her recent promotion and hinted that she'd fixed a few report issues to make it happen. I pulled the logs. Watch the timestamps. I noticed she had edited 2 major reimbursement forms from 3 months ago, expenses tied to a fictional client that didn't exist in our database. Her digital signature was on every line. I could have confronted her. Could have asked why she was requesting access to edit past records when it violated company policy. But I was long past confrontation. I wasn't in this to catch her. I was in it to build the cleanest break possible. And if karma wanted to join me for the ride, I wasn't going to send it away. So I flagged it anonymously. That was the thing about IT. Most of our work happened in the shadows. We were ghosts in the walls, voices behind firewalls. No one questioned the IT report if it was clean, factual, and wrapped in a bow. I submitted it to our department head with a note about irregular expense behaviors and quietly referenced the user in question. I didn't write her name in the body, just attached the metadata logs and left it to them. It was more than enough. The following week, I saw the investigation begin. Softly, quietly, like a storm gathering just offshore. The finance director started pulling monthly reports. Compliance requested system access logs. HR asked for details on her promotion timeline. I watched it unfold like a chess match I'd already won. All I had to do was move one pawn and let the rest fall into place. At home, Tara was oblivious. She was still glowing from her office victory. She came home that Friday talking about how she was a rising star, how she'd been invited to lead a panel at an industry conference in April. She poured herself a glass of wine, kicked off her heels, and laughed about some loser client who'd misread a pricing chart. She didn't ask me about my day. She hadn't asked me about my day in months. What struck me was how easily she floated above her own mess, so sure she'd never drown. I realized then that Tara didn't believe in consequences. She believed in spin. She could rationalize anything, laugh her way out of any corner. But this wasn't personal. This was corporate, unforgiving, monitored, logged, and I was making sure every detail stayed visible. Every night, I backed up my work logs, created copies of the audit files, and kept them in my encrypted drive, just in case she tried to redirect blame. I had no doubt she'd call foul when it came. Say someone targeted her. Blame a system glitch. But Monarch's audit system didn't lie. And I wasn't the system. I was the guy who handed it the flashlight. There was a strange peace in it, watching the woman who mocked me unravel her own career thread by thread, never realizing who tied the first knot. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just observed, documented, waited. She was setting the fire herself. All I had to do was make sure the exit doors were clear for me when the smoke hit. The moment her suitcase clicked shut, I knew it was time. Tara had a 3-day business trip lined up to San Diego, a so-called networking event with cocktails, sales pitches, and more ego-stroking than actual work. She was excited in that way only she could be. I was dancing over her phone as she double-checked her itinerary and bragged about who she was sharing a hotel floor with. Big clients, she said. The real decision-makers. I smiled, nodded, kissed her cheek like nothing in the world was changing. But it was. I watched her car pull out of the driveway at 6:12 a.m. sharp, taillights glowing red in the early fog. Her location tracker, which we'd set up for safety years ago, was still active. She never thought to turn it off. That was her first mistake. She never assumed I paid attention. But I did. I watched as she crossed county lines, then state lines. When her little digital dot finally landed at her hotel, 2 hours and 41 minutes away, I stood from the couch and called in the cavalry. 3 of my friends pulled up in a rented U-Haul by 10 a.m. sharp. We didn't waste time. Everything I had pre-packed was ready to go, labeled, taped, sorted into keep, store, and new apartment. We worked like a well-oiled machine. Every item I touched had already been documented and deemed mine. No pettiness, no emotional grabs. Just my guitar, my files, the mugs I'd bought before we were even married, my clothes, my books, my work equipment. Not a single thing I didn't have a receipt or a rightful claim to left with me. And then there was Pixel, our cat. Well, my cat, really, had belonged to me before the marriage. Tara had never liked her much. Said she was too needy, too skittish. But Pixel always knew. She was the only one who'd curl up beside me when Tara left me on the couch with a throw blanket and a sideways glance. I found her hiding under the bed when we began moving the last of my boxes. She blinked at me with wide, questioning eyes, and I swear she knew something was shifting. I reached out. She climbed into my arms without hesitation. I hadn't originally planned to take her. I thought maybe I'd leave her for Tara as some sort of peace offering. But as I looked into those big, frightened eyes, something in me shifted. Pixel was family, and she deserved better too. So I packed up her bed, her toys, her scratching post, and brought her along. She curled up in the passenger seat like she belonged there. We finished by 2 p.m. flat. Everything was loaded. Every drawer I touched was wiped clean. I didn't trash the place. I wasn't here for theatrics. I left the apartment the same way I was leaving the marriage, quietly, completely, without chaos. No broken dishes. No shattered picture frames. Just absence. Before I stepped out the door for the last time, I placed one final thing on the kitchen counter, her grandmother's engagement ring. She'd taken to wearing it on a chain around her neck after her grandmother passed. But lately, it had been left carelessly in a drawer. I didn't want it. Didn't need it. But I knew it mattered to her, or at least it used to. I left it next to a folded piece of printer paper that simply read, Tara, I've moved out and filed for divorce. Future communication should go through my attorney. Warren. No emotion. No goodbye. Just the facts. I locked the door, dropped the key in the envelope, and slipped it through the landlord's drop slot like any other tenant ending a lease. When I stepped into the crisp afternoon air, I took my first real breath in years. The new apartment wasn't fancy. It was smaller, quieter, but it was mine. No passive-aggressive post-it notes. No eye rolls when I stammered. Just space. And silence. And a sunbeam on the floor where Pixel immediately curled up as if she knew. This was home now. That night, I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. I didn't care. I slept better than I had in months. Maybe years. No tension in my chest. No walking on eggshells. Just the occasional sound of Pixel batting her toy mouse across the hardwood, and the soft rustle of leaves outside my window. Around midnight, my phone buzzed, 12 missed calls. Then texts. Where the hell are you? Warren, this isn't funny. Are you trying to punish me? My mom says this is illegal. You can't just vanish. I muted the thread. I wasn't interested in her panic. I was only interested in my peace. And for the first time since she stood up and mocked me in front of her family like I was some broken machine, I finally felt whole. By Sunday night, the storm began to crack. It started with the notifications, my phone lighting up like it owed her answers. 19 missed calls. A string of texts, unhinged and escalating. From confusion to accusation to fury. And all of it arrived like a symphony of chaos I refused to conduct. Warren, where the hell are you? You're stealing from me. This is theft. My mom says this is illegal. You can't just leave without a word. But I had left a word. One word, in fact, attorney. That should have been enough. I didn't ghost her. I liberated myself with precision, with the kind of grace she didn't recognize because it didn't explode. It exited. And now, her world was unraveling not because I screamed, but because I didn't. Monday morning, I woke to silence in my new apartment. Pixel slept curled at my feet, a warm knot of contentment. I stretched, brewed coffee, and watched the light fill the room like I'd earned it. And in a way, I had. Every square inch of this place felt like victory, not over her, but over the version of me who once thought enduring mockery was the price of love. At 9:46 a.m., the message came. HR called me in. Someone reported my expense reports. Warren, did you do this? I didn't reply. I sipped my coffee. Let the silence be my voice. I imagined her sitting in that pristine office at Monarch, across from a grim-faced HR rep and someone from compliance. Her lies, so small, so casual, suddenly scrutinized under fluorescent light. By noon, I heard from a friend in accounts. Word was out. Tara's promotion had been revoked pending investigation. The fraudulent client names, the altered reports, everything I flagged anonymously was now part of an official audit. And her charm wouldn't save her this time. Spinning the truth only worked when people weren't looking directly at it. My phone rang again. Then again. Then came the voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. You think this is funny? You're trying to ruin me. I can't believe you'd stoop this low after everything I've done for you. It was the last one that made me laugh, quiet, bitter. After everything she had done for me? Like filming my stutters, mocking me in front of her friends, stripping me down to a caricature, a malfunctioning puppet at her family's table. The only thing she ever built for me was a cage. By late afternoon, the tone had shifted. Rage gave way to desperation. Warren, please, just talk to me. I don't know what to do. Then, a new message. Not from her, but from Rhea, her younger sister. The only Holloway who had ever looked me in the eye like I was a person. Hey, I don't want to get in the middle, but Tara is not doing well. She's been crying since she got back. I know what she did was wrong. I should have spoken up that night. But I didn't. I'm sorry. Please, just talk to her. I read it twice. Rhea had always been different. Quiet. Observant. That night at Christmas dinner, she was the only one who didn't laugh. She didn't speak up either, but she winced. She saw the cruelty, even if she didn't call it out. And now, she was reaching out like a lifeline. Not for Tara, but maybe for her own guilt. I typed a response. Paused. Deleted it. Instead, I sent one line. The man she mocked for stuttering is choosing silence now. Rhea didn't reply. Not right away. I think she understood. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened a folder labeled Proof. I reviewed it one last time, screenshots, chat logs, video files, timestamped records. I forwarded everything to Adrian, my attorney, just in case. Not to escalate. Just to protect. My phone buzzed once more. This time, Tara's name lit up with no message. Just a missed call. Then another. She was still spinning. Still trying to reassemble a narrative where she wasn't the villain. But this wasn't her story anymore. It was mine. And I was writing it with space, not apologies. For dinner, I made pasta simple, warm, grounding. Pixel sat at the edge of the counter watching me eat, blinking slowly like she approved of the new chapter. I turned off my phone. Not because I feared what she'd say next, but because I finally understood something I should have realized a long time ago. Closure doesn't come from a conversation. It comes from a decision. And I had made mine. It was 5 months later when she finally showed up. By then, the noise had stopped. The missed calls faded into nothing. The emails dried up. Even Rhea had stopped checking in. The world went quiet in the best possible way. I'd settled into my new apartment. Every piece of furniture chosen by me. Every photo frame holding a memory I actually wanted to preserve. The air smelled like cedarwood and I hadn't realized was falling. Her hair was soaked, her mascara streaked, her coat clinging to her body like a shroud. She was yelling my name, fists balled against the glass. Warren, please, open the door. I didn't move at first. I just stared. There was something surreal about seeing her there, stripped of her usual polish and poise. She looked like a woman who had finally been told the party was over and now had nowhere to go. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Rhea. She found out her new boyfriend cheated on her. She's spiraling. Please, just talk to her. I'm on my way. I didn't reply. Not yet. Tara started sobbing. Real sobs. Her voice cracked the way mine used to when I was 12 and terrified of reading aloud in class. Warren, I messed up. Please, I just want to talk. You didn't even give me a chance. I walked to the window and drew the curtain open. She froze, eyes meeting mine like she hadn't really believed I was watching. For a second, I saw something flash in her expression, hope, maybe. The hope that I'd still be the man who'd fold in the face of her tears. That I'd open the door, let her in, and carry the weight of her guilt just to keep the peace. But that man no longer lived here. I slid the window open just a crack, enough for my voice to pass through, not her. You're not sorry you hurt me, I said, my voice level, unwavering. You're sorry it cost you. Tara flinched. The words hit her like a slap, not because they were loud, but because they were true. And this time, I didn't stutter. Not one syllable. She stared at me, lips trembling. Her makeup was ruined, but I saw everything clearly. She wasn't standing there because she loved me. She was standing there because the world had stopped cushioning her fall. The boyfriend she left me for? Gone. The job she flaunted? Under review. The family who once laughed along? Embarrassed and silent. And now, with nowhere else to go, she came back to the man who once served as her safety net. But I wasn't a net anymore. I was a boundary. She took a step back, like the truth physically pushed her. Warren, I'm not asking to come back. I need to explain. I tilted my head, almost amused. Explain what? That you didn't mean it? That filming me struggling to speak was out of love. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, she was the one searching for syllables. Ria's car pulled up just then. She leapt out, rushing toward her sister like she'd done this before, like this wasn't the first time Tara had collapsed into a puddle of consequences. Tara looked at me one last time. Her eyes still begged, but I had nothing left to give her. I shut the window. She didn't knock again. Ria helped her into the car, gave me a small, apologetic glance, and drove off without a word. Back inside, I returned to folding laundry. Pixel reappeared and rubbed her head against my leg, purring softly. That was the last time I saw Tara in person. And I didn't feel cruel for closing the window. I felt clear. After she left my window that night, there was no more pounding. No more voicemails or inbox floods. Just a long, still quiet that felt almost sacred. Ria texted the next day, nothing urgent, just an apology wrapped in guilt. I shouldn't have stayed silent that Christmas, she wrote. You didn't deserve that. None of it. I'm sorry, Warren. It sat there on my screen for a long time. She meant it. I could tell. Ria was the kind of person who saw things but never knew what to do with them. She wasn't cruel like her sister, just quiet. And maybe that's what made it worse sometimes, watching someone who knew better say nothing. But I didn't hold it against her. Silence is a language too. I spoke it for years. I typed out my reply slowly. You have nothing to apologize for. But she does. Just not to me. Because I didn't need it anymore. Not her voice, not her explanation, not her regrets. People think closure is about understanding. It's not. Closure is about choosing peace over the need to hear why they did it. Closure is a door you lock from the inside, not an apology you wait to receive. After I had sinned, I leaned back and looked around my apartment. It was still modest, still half-decorated, but every inch of it felt like me. The bookshelf was no longer a display of Tara's curated intellectual selections, books she never read, arranged by color like props. Now it was filled with my favorites. Dog-eared, annotated, real. A thrift store chessboard sat by the window. I didn't play often, but I liked the idea of it. A game of patience and strategy. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I kept thinking back to that word she used, planned. Like it was a crime to protect myself. You planned it all, she'd spat at the window. Yes, I had. And thank God I did. Because the only alternative was staying. Staying and hoping that one day she'd stop laughing at me. That one day, her eyes would soften instead of roll every time I stumbled over a syllable. That maybe, if I worked hard enough, loved quietly enough, tolerated long enough, I'd earn her kindness. I know better now. Kindness isn't something you earn by enduring humiliation. It's not a prize you win by shrinking yourself small enough to fit into someone else's comfort zone. It's the bare minimum. And if someone withholds it, mocks you, weaponizes your flaws for applause, then they were never your partner. They were your audience. And I was done performing. That afternoon, I donated the last of her things she'd left behind, stuff she never asked for. A scarf, a pair of heels, a candle she once claimed gave her headaches. I dropped them off at a local shelter and walked out lighter. On my way back, I stopped at the park nearby. There was a young boy learning to ride a bike, his father jogging beside him, shouting encouragements every time he wobbled. I watched them for a while. Not out of longing, but because something about their rhythm felt honest. It reminded me of something I'd lost in that marriage, joy in the small things. Simplicity, support without ridicule. I remembered how Tara used to interrupt me mid-sentence to help finish my thoughts. How she'd joke, you know what he means, when I struggled. She thought she was covering for me. She was covering me up. There's a difference. I spent so long second-guessing myself in that relationship, measuring every word before I spoke, timing my breaths to keep pace with her expectations. I became fluent in avoidance, mastered the art of small, safe talk. I let my voice shrink just so she wouldn't sigh. But now Now my voice was mine again. It didn't matter that I still stuttered sometimes. The difference was that I didn't flinch when I did. I didn't look around to see who was watching. I just breathed and kept going. Back at the apartment, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving. Nothing fancy, just something that reminded me I didn't need a reason to celebrate. I poured a glass, toasted to the silence, and smiled. I knew she'd tell her version of things to people. Maybe that I was cold, calculated, cruel. Let her. Let her twist the facts into something she could live with. That wasn't my concern. My job wasn't to defend the choices I made to protect myself. My job was to move forward. I sat by the window, Pixel curled in my lap, the city humming below. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for a knock at the door. I had closed it myself. And it was staying that way. 6 months post-divorce, my apartment finally felt lived in. The boxes were long gone, replaced by shelves holding things that mattered, framed photos from childhood, a signed baseball from my brother, a mug from my first real tech job. Nothing extravagant, just authentic. And in that authenticity, I found the kind of stability no luxury condo with a walk-in wine cooler could have ever given me. My nameplate at Monarch now read Senior Systems Analyst. A quiet promotion that came without fanfare, but meant everything to me. I worked remotely 3 days a week, and when I did go in, people didn't look through me anymore. They looked to me. Something shifted the moment I stopped shrinking into the background. Maybe it wasn't just the title. Maybe it was the way I carried myself now. Taller, steadier, like I no longer braced for someone to laugh when I opened my mouth. I still stuttered. Not every day, but sometimes. And when I did, I didn't feel shame rising in my throat. I just paused and kept talking. Because now, when I spoke, I knew I was being heard for my intent, not judged for the delivery. It didn't happen overnight. It started with speech therapy. Not because I wanted to be fixed, but because I wanted to understand my voice better. I found a therapist named Claire, kind, sharp, no nonsense. In our first session, I told her, I want to stop feeling like I'm broken every time I open my mouth. She didn't pat me on the shoulder or offer empty reassurance. She just said, then let's unlearn everything they made you believe. That was the beginning. We didn't focus on eliminating the stutter. We focused on removing the shame tied to it. Shame I hadn't even realized was wired so deep into me. Tara didn't give it to me, but she built her whole comedy routine around it. And when someone does that long enough, you stop hearing your own voice as yours. You start hearing it the way they do, glitched, funny, small. Claire helped me reclaim it. You never had a speech problem, she told me once, scribbling something in her notepad. You had a judgment problem. Hers, not yours. I kept that sentence with me like armor. The more I understood that, the more I stopped apologizing for existing in a way that wasn't polished or packaged. I no longer avoided phone calls. I stopped pre-writing every sentence in my head before saying it aloud. I even joined a local tech panel and presented a workshop, me, the guy who once panicked at ordering coffee out loud. I stumbled on my second slide, took a breath, made a joke about my built-in buffering system, and moved on. The audience didn't laugh at me. They leaned in closer. Because real recognizes real. Outside work, I found comfort in the mundane. I hit the gym 4 times a week. I learned how to make actual sourdough bread. I built a routine not based on pleasing someone else, but rooted in presence. I went to open mic poetry nights sometimes, not to perform, just to listen. There's something about spoken word that resonates when you've spent most of your life editing your own. Pixel thrived, too. She'd taken to sleeping on my desk while I worked, a silent purring metronome that kept me grounded. I always found it oddly poetic that the pet Tara never wanted became the quietest witness to my healing. Every now and then, someone would ask what happened between Tara and me, especially those who knew us as a couple, polished, professional, put together. At first, I struggled with the answer. Not because I didn't know it, but because it always came out too heavy for casual conversation. Eventually, I settled on one sentence. She used to laugh when I struggled to speak. Now she listens to the silence I left behind. That was all I needed to say. The people who understood nodded. The ones who didn't matter. Tara never reached out again. Rhea did, once on a rainy afternoon when she passed by the park where we'd once hosted a family picnic. She said the bench we sat on was still there. Still empty. Are you okay? She asked. I'm not okay, I replied. I'm better. Because healing doesn't mean the hurt never existed. It means the hurt doesn't control the narrative anymore. 6 months post-divorce, I didn't just find my voice. I found the version of myself I'd buried trying to be lovable to someone who never saw my value beyond the punchlines. Now, when I speak, even with pauses, even with stumbles, I speak clearly. And no one else gets to define the worth of my voice again.